My name is Ken.
And my name is Jason.
And today we're reviewing
Podcast.
Alright, so you may have heard about us through our tutorial review show, Two Guys and Some Cardboard, and you may actually be wondering why we're doing a little podcast.
One of the main things with our main show is that it's not exactly scripted, but it's not it's very structured, and we have a lot of things to say beyond showing people how to play games. So we felt it would be kind of nice to just be able to talk about some of the other issues going on in gaming and stuff like that.
Yeah, so on one hand, we could have pointless little debates on like different parts of gaming and such like that, and other times we can just sort of have fun and chill out and stuff, which is kind of nice because we do a lot of that during the episode that you don't actually get to see.
Yeah, each episode usually takes about 4 or 5 hours to build, which we managed to distill down to about 30 to 45 minutes, depending.
Yeah, depending on the episode.
So we just edit out all of the silliness and the ridiculous things we talk about,
which is plentiful.
Very plentiful, yeah. So we just wanted to let you guys in on that, I guess.
Yeah, so that's pretty much why we're going for this. So we're kind of hoping to do this, ideally, I guess, weekly, because it's gonna be significantly less difficult to do this weekly than it would be to do just the regular videos like every 2 weeks, because the videos take a lot of freaking effort on both of our parts.
Yeah, plus we both have to physically be together in the same place for that, which we don't have to worry about with this.
Yeah, for sure. So this is also going to be a learning experience for both of us because just like Two Guys and Some Cardboard was a learning experience on having to make a video webisode series type thing, or internet slang, this is going to be a lesson for us on how to make a podcast. So this is going to be fun for both of us and interesting and kind of new territory. So
and hopefully it'll be fun for you.
Yeah, hopefully.
So first of all, I know this is a little bit self-serving, but we did want to mention that Ken and I are actually on the board of directors of the Nova Scotia Boardgaming Society. It's a local society, and we essentially organize and promote events in Nova Scotia that relate to board gaming. So, if any of you happen to be local to Nova Scotia and you want to come out and game at one of our events, we do have a website. It's www.boardgasm.org. Check us out. We have all the info up there.
For sure. And, yeah, like Jason said, we're in the Nova Scotia area. We do some events, and we also would like to start making sure that we can kind of use this as sort of a news channel sort of thing for other events that are related to board gaming or, similar type events, role-playing games and such as well. It seems like there's a lot of local groups in the Nova Scotia area, which is kind of cool, or the Halifax area, rather, of Nova Scotia, which is kind of cool because this hobby, from what it seems like you kind of get mixed feelings depending on who you talk to, but some people feel like the board gaming industry or like the role-playing industry or just the tabletop gaming industry is kind of like dying, and I don't know how much validity that is. Like, I don't really have, too much of an in on that.
I know that when I first got into it, I really, looked at it as sort of a niche hobby, something that, was on the fringes. But,
yeah,
through organizing and creating the NSBGS, we've actually met a lot of local groups, and there's actually a lot of people just in, our little corner of the world who are really into this stuff. So, it's one of those things where appearances can be deceiving.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because, you think you're a member of this little niche group, and then you suddenly realize that a lot of other people are too, and it's really cool. So.
Yeah, and one thing I really have to say, again, in meeting all of these groups, is that everyone in the community is, pretty cool.
Yeah,
it's one of those few communities that everyone's very respectful, very enthusiastic. You just don't get that a whole lot, especially in things to do with gaming.
Absolutely.
All the other genres of gaming, there are people who tend to be, not so awesome. But.
Yeah, and I kind of feel that that's something that's sort of inherent to this hobby because with board games and role-playing games, which are kind of like and card games, but I always lump that in with board games. But tabletop gaming in general, you kind of have to accept the fact that you have to be around the table with like some other people, so you already have to buy into the fact that you have to be social. So I think that because of that, sometimes we get lucky and we actually get really good communities because of that. That's not to say we don't have our own weirdos and people that are kind of like, but I mean, every group kind of has those, but I'd like to think we have less of them than.
Well, yeah, and those people, they tend to get weeded out anyway because they don't get invited back.
Well, that's true, or they get invited less frequently.
Yeah.
But,
so.
Yeah. That's probably enough about that, though. What else did you want to talk about, Jay? Any local events coming up that you can think of?
Well, yes, as a matter of fact, Ken, there is.
Do tell me.
We are actually running an event. It's sort of our main event, BoardGasm, that we do twice a year. This time around, we're having it on February 11th from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. at a local gaming store, Quantum Frontier. There is a ticket charge of $10 at the door. That's just to help pay for the space. We're probably going to have a raffle. We usually do. And I believe Pat is going to be giving us a discount as well, as per usual. I don't know.
He has mentioned that. I can't confirm or deny that, I suppose, but I guess we'll know that for sure on the day.
Yeah. I know in the past he's given us 10% off for games, which is
pretty sweet.
Pretty awesome. So hopefully that trend will continue. Regardless, he's a really cool guy, and if you're in the local area, I'd recommend checking him out if you haven't already.
Yeah, for sure. So that's BoardGasm. Now, obviously, again, this is a little self-serving because we're only talking about an event that we actually run, because that's an Nova Scotia Boardgaming Society event, or NSBGS event, as we call it, or probably NSBGS, as Jason might call it.
I don't know what you're talking about. I would never do something like that.
No, you would never try to pronounce an acronym that has that only has consonants and couldn't possibly contain a proper vowel.
Craziness.
Absolutely, no. You would never do something like that.
No.
But as another thing we'd like to do in this show, this podcast rather, is we'd like to talk about local events. We have a list of other local events that are coming up fairly soon, and we're going to try to work our way through that maybe in later episodes. In this one, we're just trying to set the groundwork, though, and we're just trying to get our basics down. But if you are actually local to Halifax or Nova Scotia, Maritimes, Canada, North America, Earth, if you want to send us an event that you're doing, if we get a chance and we have enough time and all that jazz, and we think it's relevant to the audience that we would possibly draw on this, we'd love to talk about it on our show for a little bit. So feel free to email us, and we'll have some information in our show notes and such that you can do that with.
Remember, we're trying to keep the list down, so if you happen to not be on Earth, please don't contact us.
Yes, well, this is also true. Right, so the next thing we would normally be doing, I guess, if this was a regular episode for us, considering we don't have any regular episodes, I guess that's sort of a moot point, but we're going to probably try to have a topic related to board games that we are going to go through just to kind of have some fun with, because that's basically, we want to try do some news and such like that, and then go to a topic, so I guess that's the next thing we're going to do. But today, Jason, if you'd like to introduce our topic.
Well, we're pretty much just planning on talking about sort of the pivotal events that have kind of occurred in the last little while in board gaming.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
I certainly have one that I would like to bring up.
The one you're actually going to be bringing up is kind of my favorite one, so we might as well start with that and then let it go downhill from there. So
downhill.
Go ahead, Jason, take it away.
But the thing I wanted to bring up is the whole Merchant of Venus debacle.
Yes.
I'm sure that anybody who is listening to this podcast is probably somewhat familiar with board game news, so you've probably heard about this. But in case you have been under a rock for the past few months.
At least under a non-board game related rock.
Well, yeah, you would pretty much have to be disconnected from the community for a while to have missed this. But essentially, what happened is there is a game called Merchant of Venus. It's a Grail game, so it's something everybody wants. It was printed way back in the '80s by a designer, Richard Hamblin, for Hasbro. And as some of you may be familiar with, there's kind of a lot of issues with the licensing of all of the games that Hasbro had put out at the time, to the point that nobody really knows who still has the license. Hasbro kind of thinks they do, I guess. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah, that's fair.
So basically what happened was that Richard Hamblin, the designer of this game, he actually approached company Stronghold Games. They're actually very well known for doing reprints and, really staying true to the source material. And
trying to modernize them too, if I recall as well, right?
Modernize them as far as components, but they stick to the original rules as much.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Right.
But anyway, Richard Hamlin had been working with them to create a newer, updated version of this, and they actually did announce it, I believe, at Essen just this past year. And there was a big to-do. Everyone was very excited, and then basically within a few hours, Fantasy Flight Games actually announced that they were reprinting Merchant of Venus, and the confusion came from the fact that Fantasy Flight had actually contacted Hasbro, and of course Hasbro thought that they owned the license, and so they essentially sold it to Fantasy Flight. Fantasy Flight has been working on this apparently for quite a few months, I think 18 months.
Yes, right.
Somewhere in that vicinity. And so it's turned into this huge debacle with, both sides admittedly have been, really great. There hasn't been mudslinging or anything. Both sides have said that they regret the situation, and they respect the other side and all of that. But
which is good. It's nice to see that they're actually they're trying to be nice as they can about this, because it's obviously a really awkward situation for all parties involved.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But no, it's a really interesting situation, and it's actually kind of sad because it's kind of hard to say when either of these games are going to actually see the light of day, just because nobody really knows whether they own the rights or not.
Well, that's the really unfortunate part about it too, because it's a game that people are fairly excited for. It's a fairly classic game. It's not one I'm intimately familiar with, but it seems that it's one that people are at least somewhat passionate about.
Yeah. And
it seems like it's possible it's going to have a fairly delayed release because of the fact that of all this lawyership and copyright issues and all that sort of thing.
Well, it's also unfortunate in the fact that Richard Hamblin, he actually designed a number of games that are very popular.
Yes.
There's also a game called Magic Realm, which a lot of people are still really, really into. And he's kind of viewed as a bit of a recluse.
Yes.
Kind of a gaming hermit. So, he kind of came out of hiding to,
so to speak.
Well, yeah, to proffer this game. And now it's kind of looking like this is going to turn into a whole fiasco, and a lot of people are thinking that this may cause him to not want to do this with his other games, i.e. Magic Realm. And
right.
That would be very unfortunate, because Magic Realm, I actually do have a copy of it myself, and it's a very cool game, I must say. It's kind of almost a game masterless RPG.
Ah, yes.
A lot of strategy work in. It's really neat. I would recommend looking it up and having a look at that. But so a lot of people think that this is going to cause him to go back into hiding, and we're not going to see that, which is really, really unfortunate.
That is really unfortunate, because really when it comes down to it, you see a lot of reprints of old games, like we saw this, maybe not recently might be the wrong word, but with, say, Power Grid. Power Grid was originally put by Friedman Freeze and then was redone by Friedman Freeze again. But it's really interesting to see the potential that an older game can have. I'm somewhat against the idea of rehashing old ideas, like in, say, Hollywood, because there's the whole idea of there is no such thing as a new idea, and therefore we must recycle old ideas because they're just easier to do. But I feel for the most part with board games, there's a lot of board games that can really benefit from having a renewed interest by the community, and also having an updated version of it, because there's just some games that with board games, showing your age isn't really so big of a deal in most circles, but looking really nice and fresh and young is the way to like really get people into games. In a way, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of Power Grid, I don't know if you know this, Ken, but there's actually a new Power Grid app.
Is that the building manager one?
No, actually, there is another one called Power Grid: The First Sparks.
Oh, really? Okay, this is actually news to me. Do tell.
It was just released, and it's essentially it uses the mechanics of Power Grid, but it actually has a sort of a hex map, and you're actually playing a tribe of ancient villagers, and you actually have to build up your civilization with
interesting
stuff. But it actually uses the Power Grid mechanic, so I thought that was funny.
That's really interesting. So it's not really Power Grid per se, but it has a similar sort of like mechanic to it.
Well, yeah, it's kind of a sequel in the sense that it uses the same kind of auction.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't really know why they called it Power Grid.
Well, I mean, like it's one of those things. Like a name carries weight. So if they call it like Caveman Grid or something like that, it wouldn't carry nearly as much weight as Power Grid for the people that know what Power Grid is. So.
But anyway, that's kind of off topic, I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose it is.
But regardless, I mean, as far as the whole Merchant of Venus thing goes, and there's kind of two camps on that too, eh?
Yeah.
There are some people who really want Stronghold Games to get it because they feel Stronghold Games is going to reprint essentially the original game just with updated components. And there are some people who want to see Fantasy Flight do it because Fantasy Flight, of course, is known for, really producing like massive games with all kinds of bits and all kinds of stuff with it. So.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the whole thing really comes down to this strange sort of issue where it's like Jason was sort of mentioning there, where copyright back in the day it was unclear whether or not it was the game designer or the game publisher that owned the rights to a game. And nowadays it's a lot clearer. Generally speaking, the game designer has the rights to the game, like bearing, of course, legal contracts and such like that. I mean, you actually see the name of game designers on the boxes of games now. Like, I can recognize the name Friedman Freeze or Mr. Rosenberg from the Agricola set of games.
Yeah.
Quite easily. And I know, okay, well, if he's designed this game, I can expect certain things. Like, with Rosenberg, I can expect there to be something related to fishing or harvesting in some manner. And with Friedman Freeze, I can usually expect there to be strange turn order mechanics, which are generally really, really cool.
Well, you can usually expect that you will never know whose turn it actually is.
At least not the first time you play it, but it'll get awesome the more you play it.
Yeah.
But this whole issue of copyright came up really prominently in the past. Really, it's mostly been the past few weeks of essentially the beginning of 2012, but it did start back in 2011, and the whole issue, of course, of SOPA and PIPA, the Stop Online Piracy Act and the Protect Intellectual Property Act. And we're in Canada, and they may say we're a little slow, but we would still be affected by this, even though this is a United States policy. It's a worldwide policy. And it actually, you may not really assume, because like this whole thing of intellectual property, we immediately assume this is related to things like the music industry and the movie industry and other big visual media and audio media type companies like that. But this actually would affect the board gaming industry. This is something that actually would sort of, maybe not damage it per se, but big sites like Board Game Geek, one of the dynamos of board gaming culture on the internet, would be severely hindered by this and would probably be immediately taken down or else basically be paralyzed.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the major components of Board Game Geek is, videos and blogs and things like that, and a lot of that obviously has copyrighted material in it.
Absolutely.
It would be very unfortunate if people were no longer able to do that. Well, I mean, we would pretty much have to take down our show, which would be very sad for me because we put a lot of effort into that.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, this actually would affect us in a maybe a lesser way than it would affect some other people, because we're not prominently displaying copyrighted material like the music that we use in our shows, with the exception of a couple episodes that we try to use just with fair use. But most of our shows, we actually use original music, which is actually done by my father, Paul Sullivan. So that's not something we'd really have to worry about. But the showing of the components on the show, this suddenly starts to go into the whole issue of what's copyright material, what's fair to use, and like what's excessive and stuff. And YouTube, assumedly, if they had to fall under SOPA, would probably essentially make a no-tolerance policy on basically anything that could be construed as intellectual property, and that's probably the fairest way to sort of deal with it, because if they're going to be held accountable for their users and such, they would probably be like, yeah, anything that could even remotely be applicable or fall under these issues, like we're gonna try to ban right out.
Yeah, I mean, for those of you who aren't in the know about this stuff.
Oh yes, of course.
HIPAA is actually it's gone.
Yes, that is true. Yeah, HIPAA is now been officially,
and SOPA has actually been withdrawn.
Well, they withdrew the vote for it, but it's still technically, it's something that's still like they're technically gone.
Yeah, I'm not saying this is like. Don't get me wrong. This is not something we haven't won.
No. Like, there's a lot of people that are saying like SOPA is dead and PIPA is dead, and it's like no. We're in safe harbor and we're okay for now, but this is still an imminent threat. Like,
well, I mean, the problem is that it's the recording industry and the movie industry. They're not going to let this go until something is done to pretty much tell them that they have to stop whining about this stuff, because it's getting ridiculous at this point, because they're essentially the industries that cried wolf. Because, I mean, the recording industry, when the cassette tapes and when CDs were first introduced, they were saying, oh, well, we're going to die out now because nobody is going to pay for their music anymore.
Yeah, everybody's just going to record it off the radio, because why would they pay for music?
And the movie industry had a similar reaction to VHS tapes. And, on the one hand, I do not support piracy.
No, absolutely not.
I will admit I've partaken of the fruits of the internet one time or another, but I do believe that if you enjoy something, then you should pay for that, because people have spent money on that.
Absolutely. Like, if you truly want to support something, you have to give the people who made it money. Otherwise, you're essentially wasting everyone's time and you're just leeching off of them, and that's what piracy's all about.
Yeah, but I mean, setting that aside for now, the thing that really gets me about this, and the thing that people don't seem to really get, is that the reason that this is a big issue, the reason that this was brought up in Congress and in all of the various lawmaking bits of the United States, is because the recording industry and the movie industry are throwing billions of dollars at this issue. And my question is, if they're so bad off from all this piracy they say is happening, that they're losing so much money, how can they spend all these billions of dollars?
Yeah, if they're literally hemorrhaging money like they like to make you think that they are, where is all this money coming from to support these acts? Like, could they not just have saved that money and maybe saved themselves the trouble?
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is, these are two of the richest industries in the world. Are they losing money? Absolutely. I will not, argue that point.
No, and they're perfectly within their right to try to protect their product. I totally understand that.
But at the same time, they're not going bankrupt. They're not going to go bankrupt anytime soon. What they really need to do is they need to get with the times. They need to realize that this is a digital age, and they have to sort of find some way, some sort of happy medium, where people can download music and they can download movies, and they still get some money for it.
Absolutely. And it's not like this is like groundbreaking new ground or something like that they have to actually cover. The ability to do this actually exists already in so many forms on the internet. Like, probably the easiest one that most people would know of is iTunes. iTunes, you can get movies and music and like pretty much anything you want from the digital age, like at the touch of your fingertips. You just got to throw your credit card down on it.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of people would probably say, well, I don't have a credit card, but you know what? You can go down to the grocery store these days and you can put down $25 for a prepaid credit card.
Yeah, that's when it's the people who start to say, oh, well, I don't have a credit card, there's no way I can access this material, like, that's not fair. That's complete BS. There's every way you can access this material. That's an excuse.
Well, yeah, I mean, I personally, I don't have credit cards anymore. I got rid of them all. And you know what? I still use iTunes. I still order things online. I still do all of that stuff. It's really not hard. So.
Absolutely. And I mean, with the advent of PayPal, like, you don't really need a credit card anymore. You probably, you'd probably find easier to use PayPal with a credit card, but you don't need one. Like, if you really want to access this material, the option is always there. You just have to find a way.
Yeah.
And in this digital age, like, finding a way isn't really that hard. It's just a matter of people not wanting to make that effort.
Well, no, it's an excuse, and
it is.
I do not support that. I do feel, like I said, if you're playing a game, if you enjoy that game, you should support the developer.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we can kind of not proudly say, I suppose, but in the board gaming hobby, it's kind of really difficult to pirate games in the board gaming industry.
It's not unheard of.
No, it definitely isn't.
But for the most part, people don't go to the effort and expense of making their own components, unless it's something like, for example, actually Magic Realm. There was recently a very large redesign done. It's available on Board Game Geek, and they have all new components. They're actually they look really, really good. And that was done because the game has been out of print for like 20 years.
Yeah.
So, and the gentleman who actually created this file set, he did it at one point actually try to get a hold of Richard Hamlin to see if he was cool with him doing an actual printing of it. But unfortunately, he wasn't able to get a hold of him because of the whole hermit thing. But
of course, yeah, and I mean, understandably, he's probably not going to be able to answer every single question everybody asks him.
Well, no, and but anyway, the point is that when he was unable to contact him, he pretty much kiboshed that because he doesn't want to do that without game designer approval. And that's kind of the way it is in this industry. People are usually pretty understanding about this type of stuff. They're
for sure.
Yeah, they're not going to do stuff like that because we really value the game designers in the industry. We really think that they're pretty awesome people for coming up with this stuff, and we don't want to take money out of their pockets.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things. And like we were saying, it's somewhat. Like, you really have to go out of your way to pirate in the board gaming or even the card gaming industry. And even then, that's becoming significantly less useful because now you have the advent of all these digital board games. I mean, I was just turned on by a friend of mine, Jeff, actually, that you can actually get Dominion for free on the iPad. Dominion for free on the iPad. Like, that's just so amazing to me. I mean, obviously I had to pay for the iPad, but Dominion, like, good God.
Well, yeah, and, Fantasy Flight, they just recently Elder Scrolls for all of the mobile platforms. You can get a lot of these games for essentially next to nothing on mobile platforms, which is really cool. So, actually, even Thunderstone is going to the iPad.
Oh, very cool. That's actually a game I think we could really, really benefit from a digital release.
Yeah, and it's going to have, like, a campaign mode and everything.
One thing I will note, though, is that piracy I could actually see being really, really, really hard on the role-playing game industry.
Yeah.
And that's because of it's essentially because of the difference between the mediums there. Like, when you have a board game, you have all these components and plastic pieces like we were already talking about, and, cardboard chunks and cards and all these things. So you have to really want to, like, pirate and print it out and all this sort of jazz. But for a role-playing game book, it's so much easier for people to just rip apart a book, scan it, and then make a PDF of it, and then just throw that on the internet and replicate that about 100,000 times when people download it.
Yeah.
And it's really unfortunate too. There's sometimes a counter argument to the negativity of that there are some books in the role-playing industry that are so ancient that if they're not scanned soon, they will be pretty much lost to time entirely. This actually happened very recently to us with a role-playing game called Continuum, which, Jason, I don't think you ever actually played with us, but I think you're familiar with it, right?
I am familiar with it, and I actually did manage to find a PDF copy.
Yeah, it's actually really, really hard. If you actually go on Amazon, like, I dare I dare anyone to buy a full copy of this, because if I recall, the last time I was on Amazon, I'm just going to double check that right now. If you look for Continuum, it will be somewhere in the hundreds of dollars.
It's gotten to the ridiculous point just because it's a really niche game. It's really a cool game,
very much.
But it's a very niche game, and it's gotten to the point where the actual physical copies are so ridiculously hard to find that the price has just gone up exponentially, pretty much.
Okay, so I just found an entry for it on Amazon.com, and currently it says 5 used from $325. That's just insane.
I think that's actually a little bit low from the last time I looked.
I remember when I looked at it before, it was I do recall at one point it was somewhere in the 500 or more range. So like that's just like, on one hand, that's amazing that something like this could actually be worth that much money, considering how niche it really is. But that also is a sort of a remark on the fact that it's just so bloody hard to find. And anyway, so through like much trial, error, and like drudgery, our group actually did manage to find an actual real copy of the Continuum book for under $100. Our friend Alex actually managed to get a copy of it shipped from Australia. In addition, actually, he got the storyteller, like the Game Master Guide as well, for $80, which really is quite amazing by comparison to the $300 and $500 range we were talking about. But in order, the price he had to pay for that, on top of shipping and all that jazz, and the $80, was the fact that this book is in the worst condition a book can possibly be in. It literally has no spine. All the pages are completely 100% loose. So it's like this, the book will never be together again, and it's never going to be in perfect condition, but it's probably still like one of the only, I would guess there's probably only like maybe a couple thousand of these Continuum books remaining. And when you compare that to the volume of like the board gaming industry or the role-playing game industry and such, it's really quite insane. But I guess not like, I don't know. Again, it's sort of mirrored by the fact that it's a $300 or $500 book because it's such a niche or collector's type item at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's more or less all we have to really talk about with copyright issues and stuff. I'd just like to reiterate the fact that me and Jason, although we are talking about these whole issues of piracy and stuff, and while we are admitting that we did have to try to find this really obscure book on PDF for lack of ever otherwise able to find it, we both tried piracy when we were younger, but we didn't inhale, so we're both fine.
That's essentially it. I mean, it's one of those things with, especially with really old games like that it's kind of. I still don't really approve of it, but at the same time, if you can't get it any other way, like if it's not being sold, if copies of it on eBay are going for like hundreds of dollars, it's one of those things, right? That where again, I don't support it, but I don't have as much of a problem with it, I suppose.
In these particular cases, it's one of those things where, again, it's like something that would be practically otherwise lost to time, because. Again, like I honestly don't know how many books of Continuum were actually printed, but I'm guessing it can't have been that many, because it was a very, as I understand it, a very short run a long time ago. Well, not a long time ago, but long enough, I guess.
Yeah.
Along that same line, this sort of brings up the issue of like, obviously piracy is illegal. Like so many other things, but then of course there's the whole issue of, is it okay to be a pirate in some cases? And I mean, even in this case here with this really obscure rare book that we're talking about that is very difficult and expensive to find, is it even okay to be a pirate then? And the answer, of course, legally is no, obviously.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's some times where, I mean, is it worth it to pirate this book? Like, are you taking something away from the people who actually spent $300 or $400 on this book, but as a collector's item? Like, does it lose its value to those people in such a way? And I don't have that answer, but that's just something I kind of think of in this sort of issue.
Yeah. So I mean, this is it's a very interesting topic. It's kind of peripherally related to board games, but that's the thing with this show. That this is kind of what we want to do.
Yeah.
As we're sort of nearing the end here. This is kind of the format we're thinking of, where we just sort of talk about stuff that's kind of somewhat related. We're probably going to go off on wild tangents every now and again.
Hopefully, those tangents we can make sure are at least somewhat related to the topic at hand, or at least entertaining.
Although if we do end up talking about dinosaurs or something, well, you've been warned.
Well, that can't be helped. I mean, dinosaurs are awesome. Speaking of dinosaurs, oh my God, dominant species. What the hell?
Anyway, but yeah, so we this is kind of how our filming goes, and this is something we've kind of wanted to show, but we really don't have the time on YouTube. I don't think anybody will watch a 5-hour video of us talking about random stuff.
Well, not even so much that we don't have the time, so much as it's not like when we're producing our tutorial review episodes, we're doing just that. We're producing tutorial review episodes. We're not producing fun hangout episode and maybe do a tutorial review. I'd like to think that most people, when they go to our show, they're probably just looking for the tutorial review part. I mean, I'd like to think that most people aren't just doing that, but at the same time, I don't blame them for doing that, because I would totally do that to other people if I was looking for a tutorial review.
Well, no,
sort of thing. I would just skip right ahead.
Yeah, it's one of those things where we do include other stuff. Anybody who's a regular viewer will have seen hopefully our finale, which was, or
even just the fact that we just include random skits of semi-related topics and such.
Yeah, and there's actually kind of a storyline, I suppose, behind the show, but we try to keep that segregated, and so that
enough so it's not in the way and such.
Yeah, so that really at the core, everything that we do for the tutorial show is tutorial stuff, with maybe a few other things tacked on briefly.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why we kind of separated at the season finale that we did.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But anyway, I do hope that you've enjoyed hearing us talk for it's been almost an hour now, I believe.
Well, it's been an hour in our time, but after I slap down the editing on this miach, it's probably, I'd probably guess somewhere around 40 minutes or so. So thank you for 1 hour to 40 minutes of your time. We hope that it is not wasted and that you are not demanding it back afterwards. Because unfortunately, I do not have a time travel device, no matter how much I'd like to play Continuum.
Yes. You do not have a time travel device.
Yeah, I am also not a time travel device. So I'm sorry, guys. I just can't do that. I can't be that person for you.
Well, you can work on that, Kenny.
Yeah, I'll try for next episode.
Regardless, again, there was one of our other random tangents. But yeah, I hope that you've really, enjoyed this. Hopefully this is what you're looking for.
Absolutely.
If you think that this is a load of crap and, that you would rather just hear people talk about board games, well, you might be listening to the wrong podcast.
And also, hey, that's what the delete key is for, so it's all good.
Yeah, so we won't blame you if you don't tune in again. But if you do, you should kind of expect more of the same. And if you have any suggestions about topics you should bring up or something like that, feel free to send us an email. It's 2gascb@gmail.com.
Essentially, the abbreviated form of 2 guys and some cardboard with the number 2 instead of the letter T, because T's are less cool than 2s.
2s are pretty awesome.
2s are very awesome, yeah.
But yeah, if you have something that you would like to say or something you'd like us to say, let us know. We might include it, although we make no promises.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing is that we are going to be posting this on our YouTube channel as well as on Board Game Geek, if we can, and hopefully iTunes. Once I figure out how to do that, which this is going to be a new territory for me, so just bear with me on that. But you could rate us on iTunes when that's possible, or leave a comment there if you like us or hate us. You could leave a comment on our YouTube channel, which would be fantastic. I think that's probably the easiest way for us to find it, or even BGG, because we try to look at those and comments and comment back as much as we can for the most part.
Yep. Anyway, I guess that's about it. So we're hoping to do this, like Ken said, maybe once a week. We'll see how that goes.
I think once a week would be ideal, but if it's not once a week, I hope no one tries to crucify us or anything.
Well, yeah, this is not a syndicated TV show. We're not they're not producing according to a set schedule. This is basically whenever we feel that we can get together and we have interesting stuff to say.
Absolutely, and I don't think anybody would really ever expect that of any podcast per se. I mean, for the most part, podcasts are like once a week anyway, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're always going to be producing once a week.
Well, yeah, and this is more of a casual type podcast.
Absolutely.
So, you should bear that in mind before you start emailing us and complaining, hey, where's our new Two Gas Cab Unboxed episode? And by the way, you are super awesome if you do that.
I was actually just going to say, if you do that, I might have to offer you marriage, so take that as you will, email or not, as you will now.
Yeah, Kenny does that sometimes. He offers marriage.
I'm very open with marriage.
He is. Anyway, so I guess that's about it. So, Ken, you have anything else to say?
Yeah, Jason, how out of 5 meeples, how would you rate this podcast thus far?
I would probably give it a 6.
6 out of 5, man. That's intense. You went right over there. I hope that's not jumping the shark already on our first episode.
Well, you know me, I'm good at the maths.
Oh, for sure, yeah. You are a math wizard. Well, not being one to be left in the dust as far as, or sea foam rather, as far as shark jumping goes, I'm going to have to give this a 7 out of 5.
Oh, well, you know what then? I'm going to have to give it an 8.
Oh, an 8? Man, I can't top 8. 8's too much for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Take that.
So that gives us a grand total of 15 meeples?
Something like that.
I'm sure that's got to be worth something somewhere. Anyway, so hopefully you can join us, hopefully next week, when we produce the next one of these, if you are still listening to us. And I suppose, see you next time, and until then, have good games.